On this Sunday night, remembering the victims of Ottawa's worst mass killing, the heart-wrenching tributes for the family and friend allegedly stabbed to death, including 4 young children.
Ashwini was a treasured member of our kindergarten class.
Russia's rigged election, the record turnout and polling station protests, with the results revealed. Plus, the strongest senior. The 81-year-old Winnipeg weightlifter crushing records in his first competition.
It's truly inspiring to everyone.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight in Ottawa, where more than 100 mourners gathered to remember 6 people killed this month inside their suburban home. The funeral service paid tribute to the Sri Lankan victims, a mother and her 4 young children, as well as a family friend. The father of the children, the only survivor of the attack, was also in attendance, still bearing the scars from the attack on March the 6th. In a written statement, he says he is devastated. Mackenzie Gray has our top story tonight.
Tatiyang pi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Remembering the victims of the worst murders in modern Ottawa history. 2 adults, 4 children, the youngest just 2 months old, sharing a coffin with their mother.
Them not even having the experience of life and just dying for no reason, it's just heartbreaking.
The multi-faith ceremony, the first time the one surviving victim, Danushka Vikramasinghe, has been seen in public since his wife, 4 children, and family friend were allegedly murdered by 19-year-old Fabio De Souza, a Sri Lankan international student living with Vikramasinghe, who's now widowed. His family, in particular his young children, aged 7, 4, 2, and 2 months, remembered for their kindness and excitement.
Ashwini was a treasured member of our kindergarten class. Truly a friend to all. All her classmates wanted to sit beside her at circle time and have her join in play.
The other victim, Gamini Amerikun, had just recently moved to Canada, now survived by his 2 daughters and wife. His 11-year-old spoke from Sri Lanka.
You're an amazing dad, and not only a dad, you're an amazing friend and an amazing husband to Ami. And that everyone here misses you a lot, and we're sorry that we weren't there when you needed it, and I hope you have a good time wherever you are.
The Vikramasinghe family overwhelmed by the support, including a crowdfunding campaign that raised over $200,000.
Your kindness has provided us with comfort and reassurance during this very difficult time.
That assistance coming from across the city, including from the local temple.
May all living beings be free from pain and grief. May all living beings be free from miseries. Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Aspirational words to live by, but ones that will likely take years for Danushka Vikramasinghe to feel as he grieves the loss of his young family. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Ottawa.
Turning now to Israel's war with Hamas. More humanitarian aid has been airdropped into northern Gaza amid growing fears of an imminent Israeli ground offensive in Rafah. Jordan says it conducted 6 airdrops today alongside the U.S., Egypt, and Germany as talks to secure a ceasefire get set to resume in Qatar. Around 1.5 million people, that's half of Gaza's population, are sheltering in Rafah, and there are concerns that a military operation there will cause mass civilian casualties. But despite international pressure, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said today a ground offensive in the southern city will go ahead as planned. Well, the polls are now closed in Russia's first presidential election since that country's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and the results confirm expectations. Vladimir Putin has won a 5th term as president. The Election Commission in Moscow says Putin secured around 87% of votes counted so far. Putin's most prominent critic, Alexei Navalny, died in an Arctic penal colony 1 month ago. And today, his exiled wife, Yulia, called on voters to protest at the polls. Redmond Shannon reports on how Russians responded.
The official result was never in doubt. A huge win for Putin, even bigger than in 2018. The turnout higher too, according to the Election Commission. The three opponents who were approved to run broadly backed Kremlin policies, particularly on the war in Ukraine. In his victory speech, Putin thanked what he called Russia's warriors and said Russia cannot be suppressed when it's united, adding that the country's people are its source of power. The opposition movement for this election arguably sat in the hands of Yulia Navalnaya, who lined up to vote at the Russian embassy in Berlin. Her husband, jailed Putin critic Alexei Navalny, died in jail a month ago. She said she spoiled her vote by writing his name on the ballot. She thanked opponents of Putin for joining her call to line up at polling stations at exactly noon on Sunday. Longer lines were reported at noon in some locations in Russia. A human rights monitoring group said that at least 74 people were arrested. The 3 days of voting saw some instances of vandalism and high security at booths set up inside Russian-occupied Ukraine. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky called Putin's re-election illegitimate. Putin has accused Ukraine of election sabotage. On Sunday, a regional governor in southern Russia said Ukrainian airstrikes killed 2 people, including a teenage girl. And Russian exiled fighters allied with Ukraine claim to have taken control of a Russian border village. The war in Ukraine has been central to this election and will remain the focus of Putin as he starts his 5th term in office. A Moscow rally marking 10 years since the illegal annexation of Crimea is set for Monday. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Global News has learned that another Canadian has been killed fighting in Ukraine. Jean-Francois Rattel from Quebec, also known as Rolf, was the leader of the Norman Brigade, made up of volunteer foreign fighters from Canada, the United States, Europe, and elsewhere. Rattel, a former member of the Canadian Armed Forces, was reportedly killed in a Russian attack in eastern Ukraine. He's one of at least 10 Canadians to be killed fighting in Ukraine since Russia launched its full-scale invasion 2 years ago. Well, for the 4th time since December, a volcano has erupted in Iceland, and this one is even more powerful than the others. Those sirens could be heard from the famous Blue Lagoon Spa, smoke and ash filling the night sky. Officials say the eruption began around 8 p.m. local time on Saturday, forcing thousands of tourists and residents to flee. Authorities declared a state of emergency and are monitoring lava flowing near a power plant, but the situation now appears to be stabilizing. In Western Canada, backcountry travelers are being urged to stay alert and avoid risky terrain as warm weekend temperatures trigger high risk for avalanches. Multiple regions in BC and Alberta are under warnings for very dangerous avalanche conditions. That includes popular destinations like Whistler and Banff. In BC, temperatures have soared to record highs this weekend, with some areas reaching up to 22 degrees. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was in Halifax today, where hundreds turned out for a St. Patrick's Day rally. Poilievre continued his calls for the Trudeau government to axe the tax, a reference to the federal carbon pricing plan, which is set to increase next month. But how much will that actually cost Canadians? Heidi Petrocek reports.
Every time someone yells, axe the tax, I have to take another sip.
It was standing room only on St. Patrick's Day.
We want people to bring home powerful paychecks, but they need homes to bring them to.
Pierre Poilievre railing against the federal government's upcoming increase on the carbon price and connecting it to the affordability crisis in what felt very much like a campaign event.
I think Mr. Poilievre is out for every seat, and he knows that Atlantic Canada is a place where he can make some gains. And so he's there, he's going to visit to try to make that happen.
High rents and rising food costs bringing these supporters out.
We pay more at the end of the day, and a $1,500 one-time check is not going to cut it.
Just tired of paying too much tax, the way the economy in the country is now, and just believe in what he's saying and what he's doing.
The Prime Minister is staying the course on carbon pricing, even as 7 premiers and several provincial opposition leaders have urged a pause.
The idea is to make the polluter pay and to provide an incentive for us to change our consumption away from the stuff with the big carbon footprint.
This economics professor doesn't think delaying or scrapping carbon pricing would help more Canadians make ends meet, and says it is necessary in the midst of a climate emergency.
Theoretically, they work, and they're meant to make things more expensive. They're meant to change relative prices. They're not responsible for the increase in inflation. They're not particularly responsible for the increase in food prices.
The Halifax stop was the final one on this East Coast tour for Pierre Poilievre. He has said he plans to take this issue to Parliament this week in several votes, calling on the federal Liberals to halt the April 1st increase, and he wants Liberal and NDP MPs to vote with him. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
To avoid pain at the gas pumps, more than 350,000 Canadians have taken advantage of federal rebates to purchase electric or hybrid vehicles. But those programs that began back in 2007 are set to end next spring. And Trudeau's cabinet is now facing pressure to extend the rebates as part of an overhaul of Ottawa's electric vehicle strategy. David Aiken has the details.
The future behind the wheel is all electric, underwritten by thousands in federal and provincial rebates.
Proof's in the pudding. The two provinces with the highest incentives have the highest sales and sell 35% of the market in Canada.
The recent Quebec budget contained a measure to end that province's rebate program. Officials said it had simply become too expensive. This year, Ottawa could pay out as much as $600 million to buyers of electric and hybrid vehicles. And the federal program is not authorized to continue past March 2025.
It has accomplished a lot. I mean, if you look at the EV sales in 2023 versus 2022, they have increased by 32% year over year.
But Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is expected to renew a modified incentive program, which he tables next year's budget on April the 16th. Among the changes considered, gearing rebates to household income or paying higher rebates to electric vehicles with a longer range.
So the more incentives we see on extended range batteries, I think the more people with range anxiety are more likely to get into the market.
Most MPs on the House of Commons Finance Committee think the Trudeau cabinet should do a complete overhaul of the government's entire EV strategy. Liberal, Bloc and NDP MPs have asked Freeland to consider a new green scrappage program to take carbon-emitting gas cars off the road.
We would like people to transition from gas to electric, or it can be, transit pass. It can be electric scooter, electric bike.
Plug it in like that, and we're good to go.
Some MPs also think the rebate program should be a fee-bate program. Cash back to buyers of electric vehicles, and those rebates paid for by extra fees or taxes on the gas guzzlers. MPs also say Ottawa needs to spend hundreds of millions more on high-speed charging infrastructure. Canada has just 27,000 EV chargers now, but will need 470,000 by 2035.
Finally, the Trudeau cabinet is being asked to tell the civil service that when the federal government needs a new car, it better be electric. David Aiken, Global News, Ottawa.
Dogs in danger. Coming up, animal welfare groups in Manitoba declare a state of emergency. Dozens of animal rescue organizations have declared a state of emergency in Manitoba. They say they've reached a breaking point as animal populations grow out of control and stray dogs become more aggressive. As Melissa Ridgen reports, some advocates say it will take more than money to address the problem.
Hey, buddy. Hi. Wednesday.
This work has no shortage of adorable, but it's not easy, traveling hundreds of kilometers to rescue animals, transport and care for them, and then find them all loving homes.
Hi. Hey, Wednesday.
Candace Cronin of Wild Willow Ranch and Rescue is one of 45 animal welfare groups declaring a state of emergency in Manitoba.
The rescues are drowning. There's no funding. Adoptions are low. We're at a crisis point.
Manitoba Underdogs is one of the province's largest rescues.
Right now we're in an intake freeze because we did have to stop, bringing in dogs, and that breaks our heart, and that's not something we ever want to have to do.
She says all rescues are in the same boat as the dog population has grown out of control.
There's about 6 northern and remote communities that have announced cullings over the last 2 months. And that's due to dog attacks on other dogs and humans, and they don't have any alternative management programs available.
Rescues want the province to commit $2.5 million and a crackdown on backyard breeders. But Saskatchewan-based education and advocacy organization Save Res Dogs says money won't solve what's happening.
No, it's not just a Manitoba problem. It's really a First Nations community problem.
The relationship with dogs in many of them has to change.
Non-Native people, allies, I think they're really trying to be careful in how they navigate this. I can understand they are kind of being cautious because this is a very delicate issue.
She says the solution is respect and responsibility.
What I'd like to see is to get a resolution on animal welfare passed at the Assembly of First Nations level. That includes all the chiefs to be aware of it and to get involved.
Maslowski's hope is that more people demand change.
Use your voice. The dogs don't have a voice, unfortunately, and it's up to us to be able to bring awareness to this.
Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
Still ahead, the politics of puberty blockers, the new controversial policy affecting transgender youth in England. Alberta's premier says a decision this week by British health officials is in line with her government's plans on transgender health care. Under a new policy, UK patients under the age of 18 will no longer be able to access puberty blockers unless they enroll in a clinical trial. That decision follows a 4-year review of published research, but critics say politics are at play. Heather Yerkes-West explains.
When Justin Trudeau and Danielle Smith met face-to-face last Wednesday, Alberta's plan to limit healthcare access for transgender youth was among the topics discussed.
He did raise it, and I also raised the recent decision of the National Health Service to move forward with banning puberty blockers for youngsters. And I just said, look, we've got to follow the international evidence here.
Last week, England's National Health Service released a policy document advising that after reviewing the research, we have concluded that there is not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty-suppressing hormones to make the treatment routinely available at this time. Transgender youth in the UK will still be able to access the therapy, but only as part of clinical research trials.
Not surprising at all. Certainly, there's been a strong anti-trans movement in the UK and particularly within the government.
Questions around how best to care for transgender youth have become a contentious issue in England. Its central gender clinic is slated to be shut down, with treatment to be offered out of regional centres moving forward instead. The country's Conservative Prime Minister has also not been shy about sharing transphobic views.
We shouldn't get bullied into believing that people can be any sex they want to be. They can't. A man is a man and a woman is a woman. That's just common sense.
Last month, Alberta's premier rolled out a suite of proposed parental rights policies that included a ban on puberty-blocking therapy for children under 16. But Canada's medical community is not on side. A day after the NHS England decision, 13 Canadian medical associations posted a joint statement online. There is no one-size-fits-all approach for patients experiencing gender dysphoria. Restricting choices and appropriate care for patients can lead to permanent harm. A strong statement in an increasingly heated debate, growing more divisive by the day. Heather Yerkes-West, Global News, Calgary.
Raising the bar. Next, the senior powerlifter breaking records at a Winnipeg competition. Welcome back. You often hear that you're never too old to exercise, and one senior in Winnipeg is taking that notion to new heights. The 81-year-old took part in his first weightlifting competition this weekend, and not only did he crush it, he also powered his way into the record books. Catherine Dornian has his story.
It's Ron Brunner's first ever weightlifting competition.
I started working out and they asked me if I was interested into competing, and I said, I sure am.
And he's starting off strong.
If you want to know, I'm 81 years old. and I feel like 61 years old.
About 6 months ago, he got into powerlifting at Winnipeg's One Family Fitness Center. From there, he was ready to take on the next challenge, competing in the One Powerlifting Classic. Kyla Kamari, his coach and owner of the gym, says he's made amazing progress.
When he came to us, he couldn't even sit and get up. And now, he's doing a powerlifting competition. So being the oldest at the competition, it's truly inspiring to everyone.
Competing solo in his category, the medal was his, but he didn't choose the lightweight out, challenging himself to break provincial records and lifting a final weight of 32.5 kilograms. And his friends, family, and neighbors couldn't be prouder. A busload of his fellow residents and staff at Riverwood Square Retirement Living came out to cheer him on.
I made signs with my residents. We were so excited. We got a bus together, and it feels empowering. It's inspiring. Ron being 81 years old, it just shows you anybody can do this.
And while Ron may have come late to the weightlifting game, he says he's in it for the long haul.
It's something new to me, but I'm not going to give it up. I'll be back again next year.
Lifting his crowd of adoring fans along for the ride too. Catherine Dornian, Global News, Winnipeg.
Inspiring stuff, though I bet he's going to be sore tomorrow. That is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada, you can probably guess, Canada's biggest St. Patrick's Day parades in Toronto and Montreal. We hope you'll be able to get your green on with family and friends tonight. Thanks for watching. Neethu Garcha will be with you at the anchor desk tomorrow. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Have a great night.